The real American dream, if I really look at it and define it for myself, is just being able to do what you want to do, whenever you want to do it, however you want to do it. And my mother always told me, you can do anything you want. I always believed her. And I think that matches most people's American dream to the point where it really is a dream. So that's why they settle for a good paying job, even though they don't enjoy it. That's why they settle for a mediocre car or just a house, not the dream house. And then they get stuck.
Good news on the economy today.
U.S. economic growth continues unabated.
The world's biggest economy beat expectations again.
Stocks are edging higher in midday trading after encouraging reports on the U.S. economy.
Is this economic growth sustainable?
It looks sustainable to me.
The U.S. market appears to be one of the better places in which to invest.
I remember my 9th birthday, when my friends, they all wanted toys and things like that. I wanted a briefcase. My grandmother gave me a briefcase for Christmas. I still have that briefcase to this day. That was where my mentality was at a young age. So I was raised by a single mother, and I had 3 brothers. I was born in Manhattan, New York, the Lower East Side, and my mother was raising us by herself, and we lived in the projects in a low-income housing area. And I remember as a little kid seeing cars on bricks and cars burning and spray paint everywhere, and there was always fights, and even as a young kid, you were a witness of it. It was just part of your daily life was to watch people do these things, sell drugs and just do bad things. And in New York City, there's a lot of people that stay in the projects for their entire lives. I would see a lot of the families in New York City in the projects where they were all on welfare, and the government would actually increase their welfare based on children. So a lot of times you'll see these poor families where they'll have 8, 9, 10 kids, literally because that's the way for them to give themselves a raise, is by just having more kids. And the government, instead of making them work, they would just give them more money, more welfare money. And the more welfare money, they also qualified for bigger apartments. So you'd see these people in the projects just always relocating from apartment to apartment based on more kids and the more money that the government's willing to give them. But at an early age, I realized that I didn't want to live like this. I knew we didn't have much money. We had a lot of love, but I knew we didn't have a lot of money. I remember one of my earliest memories, we were at a grocery store, and my mother was purchasing some items, and at the end she couldn't afford it all. So we actually had to start putting some food back on the shelves in the grocery store. And I remember seeing a business person, and this business person had a briefcase. He was dressed real nice in a suit and tie, and he just didn't have a worry in the world. It just looked like I don't know what he had going for him, and he looked like he had it all together. And I was just a few feet away, traumatized, because I felt horrible that my mother couldn't afford the food for us, so we had to put some back. And I remember thinking, I wish I was this guy. Whatever he does, he just looks like a business person. I wish I could be something like him, and I wish I could be him. That was the first time that I remember thinking to myself as a young kid that I wanted to be a business person, and I wanted that feeling of not caring and having enough money and just being able to afford things. So my mother didn't want to stay stuck in the apartment complex and the housing projects that we lived in. And she knew that if she stayed there, she might turn out like that, or that her kids, us, we might turn out like all the other kids in the neighborhood, also getting into trouble and not having things. So that's when she decided to move us from New York to Puerto Rico. And once we got to Puerto Rico, we started getting into trouble also, and I started hanging around the wrong crowd. Even at an early age, you just do what is going on in the environment. So if you see people doing certain things, you hang around the same element, and eventually you get caught up in the same things. So she moved us away from Puerto Rico, and we went to Texas, to Arlington, Texas. Texas was a lot better than New York and a lot better than Puerto Rico, but the school systems still weren't that great. So from there we moved to Florida. She was again trying to get us into a better school system and into a better neighborhood, and the only thing she could do to better our lives was to remove us from the bad areas and to try somehow to put us into better school systems, even though we couldn't always afford to live in the better neighborhoods. So in Florida, same thing. We started getting in trouble, and I started personally hanging around the wrong, people and the wrong kids. And in Florida, the school system, they have an abundance of kids, so they have to ship you really to schools in the poor neighborhoods. So I had to go to a school that was literally about 15 or 20 miles away from me, where we jump on a bus, and every day you're traveling an hour and a half each way to get to school. I went to a school called Slide Junior High in Florida. It was 7th grade, only one grade, and there was 3,000 7th graders. It was one of these schools where you saw SWAT teams in front of the school every day. You had metal detectors you had to go through, and there was always a fight. The neighborhood that they shipped us into was a different race than myself, so there was always race issues, and like I said, you had to fight. At one point, there was a riot. I got stabbed in one of the riots. The SWAT teams came and stopped it. Literally, about a month after that, the principal of the school got murdered by one of the students. So those were the neighborhoods that I was raised in, and those were the schools that I went to. Thank goodness my mother knew better, and I didn't see a problem with it. I enjoyed the areas and the schools and the problems. My mother's the one that realized that she needed to do something for us and for me to make sure that we had a better life. There was a song that was going to change, all of our lives forever, especially mine, and that was a John Denver song, Rocky Mountain High. And Rocky Mountain High was a song that we'd hear, and my mother always told us how inspiring it was to her, and it just made her feel good. So it was always her dream for many years to move to Colorado because of that one song. So sure enough, she picked us up, and we moved to Colorado. When we got to Colorado, it was just a whole life change. It was like we were in paradise, because everything was clean for the first time in our lives. Clean streets and clean schools and clean teachers, and it was just a whole different world, and we all thrived, and I thrived myself. And I started reading books on business, but I always had the business aspirations even at a young age. One of my babysitters in Puerto Rico, she used to sell Avon, her and her daughter. So at one point I saw her, and people would come and buy things at her house, and I would always ask her, why are these people coming here, and then how do they know about you, and they're giving you cash money, and how are you making all this extra cash? And she told me, well, I sell Avon. So I said, well, can I help you? And she said, sure. If you want to give out some of these booklets, you can try to do some sales. So I started going door to door in my neighborhood, in my apartment complex. And sure enough, I started getting sales from people. And I remember the most money I had ever made personally, and I think I was 9 years old, I made $74 in 1 week. And that's what she paid me from my commissions based on the sales that I got. And that was the first time that I realized, wow, I just did this. But that was the light bulb that went off in my head at an early age, where I could really control and make some money for myself, even at an early age. So I started a lawn mowing business, and I did that door to door, and I made some money. Then I started, in Florida, I started selling candy, and I actually brought one of my younger brothers along with me, and we would go door to door and sell candy. At one point I was running a moving company, and I was also running a limo service. Even when I was young, I was 14 or 15. I bought my first car actually at 13. I had a paper route, and as I was doing my paper route in Aurora, Colorado, I saw a sign on a car. It was an Oldsmobile 88, I think it was, an old beater. And I knocked on the guy's door, and I asked the guy if he'd sell me his car. He said he would for $300. So I saved up for a couple weeks and bought the car for $300. I was shocked that he sold it to me. He never asked my age. He never asked for anything. He just gave me the keys, and I drove off. So yeah, it was really exciting on one level, but then on another level, it opened my eyes, letting me know that I can just keep doing whatever I want to do, which is a good and a bad thing, because I made mistakes along the way, but it also encouraged me to pursue working more and opening my own business. And who cares how old I am? I was driving me and my friends around at 13 and 14. We'd go to 7-Elevens and and did other things. I got a bigger paper route because I had a car now, so I can do more more papers. And at the time, those are the type of jobs that I did, was paper routes and odds and ends, and selling perfume at one point door to door and in parking lots. But I realized that I wanted to earn more money and make more money, and that's when I started doing the research and reading books, sales books, and everybody says in the sales industry you don't need a college degree, you don't need education. If you had hard work, motivation, and dedication, you could earn a huge amount of money. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want to just earn a regular income. I wanted to earn an income equivalent to a professional football player, a professional baseball player. I wanted that type of money. because I did have legitimate jobs where I wasn't a business owner. You know, I worked for Toys R Us at one point. My girlfriend at the time, by this time I was 15, and the girlfriend I was dating, she knew that I was probably never gonna have a college, education, and she knew I was raised poor, and we were in love. So her idea was, well, if we're in love and we're gonna last forever, you better get a stable job. And what you're doing right now isn't stable. It's not W-2. I didn't have health insurance and things like that. So I literally quit, and she didn't like the guy I was working with, Randy McComb. Our limo service also serviced the local strip clubs. And because of that, I was always around strippers and things like that. She didn't like that lifestyle. So she says, you need something more stable and you need to get away from this company. So I got a job at Toys R Us at the time, and minimum wage then was $3.85 an hour. So I went from making, taking home $700, $800 a week or more. Now I remember taking home on average about $160 or $170 a week, which, that was just barely double what I was making when I was a kid, a real kid, a lot younger. But at least I knew that if I started at the bottom, I could work my way to the top, and then I could have stability and insurance and a regular job. But I started talking to some of the managers there, and I remember the director, Tom Mohall, and he had been with Toys R Us for 9 years. And then it shocked me because he told me his income, and his income was only $32,000 a year. The amount of hours this guy would put in was astronomical. The amount of stress that he had. That was the first time that I realized, wow, I don't want to take this path and work 9 years so I can make $32,000 a year. I knew there was a better way, and I already had read the books. Yeah, that gave me stability, but I realized, I didn't want the safe bet. And I almost fell into a situation that most Americans fall into, where all of a sudden you're working these jobs, but you have to survive. And even though you might not be happy doing it, and you're not earning the money you want to earn, then eventually you get caught in it and you have to pay bills. So I worked a lot, saved a lot of money, what I thought was a lot of money, and then I started a carpet cleaning company when I was, I think I was 16 or 17. And then I started doing that, and I realized, yeah, it was nice to own your own business, a real business, but I didn't enjoy carpet cleaning. So I knew, okay, just because you want to start a business, you have to do stuff that you like. So I gave that, I sold the company. I made a small profit. And then I met a gentleman named Jimmy Johnston, and he's the one that told me, hey, you have a lot of talent. And he saw talent in me again, like a lot of people before him. But his company was promoting health and fitness centers, and his company was traveling around the country. Now that sounded amazing to me, that at this time I was 17 going on 18, and I had an opportunity to travel our country, to go to any place I wanted to go, to open offices, have a staff of people working for me, and sell. And he told me things that I wasn't sure if I believed them, but yet I did believe them. He was telling me that I'd be able to earn, $300,000 a year, $200,000 a year at 17 and 18 and 19. And at that time, he says, and that's just a start. If you do really well, you'll be earning, and he said the key words, something that I always had in the back of my mind. He says, you'll be earning money like a professional sports player. And that's why I'm like, wow, that's the kind of money I want. And I told him, I don't have an education. I'll teach you everything you need to know. You don't have to have a college degree. You can start right now. He was willing to give me responsibility. He was willing to try me out. And sure enough, I started traveling the country at 18. And that was the first time I saw real money. And living the life. My whole life was a vacation then. That was really the opener for me, where I found my calling in business and in sales. And I cannot believe that I'm making the money that I'm making without having an education. And even though I always knew there was a way, and I always knew it could happen, finally I'm experiencing it for the first time. And that was my real eye opener, where, man, I could go as far as my imagination will take me as far as business goes.